Hello and welcome to Americana X Newswatch. I'm Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. Today on the Newswatch, Trump signs executive order to end critical race theory training. This is big. This is huge. This is something we're going to be unpacking on today's show. So enjoy the show. You know, if you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Also, share this video out on whatever platform you're watching it on so we can continue to grow this Christian conservative community to encourage anyone that's out there subscribing or watching the show to participate in creating a greater America. Newswatch, it's a news commentary show for conservatives are looking for a peek behind the sensationalized headlines. And that's really what we're all about here. It's really looking at not only the headline, but then saying, what are some of the things that are happening behind the scenes? What is it that's driving the headline? All right, so let's dig into our story today. You know, the liberals, what they've been doing, you know, it's kind of been their modus operandi now for years. They're saying, hey, let's destroy America, you know, and we'll use critical race theory to push that agenda throughout all the institutions, kind of like a march through the institutions for the last 20, 30, maybe 40 years. Yeah, well, Donald Trump came along and he said, yeah, let's not destroy America just yet. And we're going to be talking about some of the actions he's taking this week to actually thwart the efforts to destroy our great nation. So, you know, there's these executive orders you'll see Donald Trump sign from time to time. Every couple of weeks, you'll see him sign his big signature and then hold it up to the camera, and they're like, oh, okay, he signed another executive order. Cool, right? This one, though, I think deserves really specific attention because I believe it stabs directly into the heart of what drives modern liberalism. Modern Democrats, their entire platform is critical race theory. I don't know if people realize that. I don't know if they attribute, you know, multiple variable things that they stand for. But really, when it comes down to it, you can trace all of their modern positions back to critical race theory. There's several articles I'm going to talk about here today. The first one I'd like to reference is an article that was published on Fox News website. I'm just going to read an excerpt from that article. I'll leave a link in the description here, but this is what the quote says. President Trump signed an executive order on Tuesday evening that banned certain race and sex-based training from federal contractors, as well as the military and federal agencies. A follow-up move to a previous memo to end critical race theory and white privilege training for executive employees that the Trump administration has called anti-American propaganda. Like I said, this move is really big. And what I want to do right now is just read a couple of tweets that Donald Trump sent himself. Okay, first tweet that he sent out. A few weeks ago, I banned efforts to indoctrinate government employees with divisive and harmful sex and race-based ideologies. Today, I've expanded that ban to people and companies that do business. And basically what he's saying is if your business is funded in any way, shape, or form by the federal government, then we're now banning this race-based ideology training. And I think that's a good number of Fortune 500 companies that actually receive some form of federal funding or incentives. So this is huge. He went on to say, with our country, the United States military, government, contractors, and grantees, Americans should be taught to take pride in our great country. And if you don't, there's nothing in it for you. And basically what he's getting at here is if you don't want to take pride in this great nation, you shouldn't be able to benefit financially, or you shouldn't be able to build a business model on destroying the country that you're building that business system within. It's a capitalist system. You're now going to use your consulting business to destroy the very thing. It is kind of madness when you point it out. But this is all very encouraging. You know, the fact that Donald Trump is actually going after the biggest juggernaut driving the liberal narrative, it's very big. No president has ever taken it on at this level. I think that presidents from time to time have given it lip service. You know, I guess you could point to a few quotes where they're like, well, political correctness isn't great, right? This is the first time a president is really putting his foot down and saying, no more. Many commentators have been covering this week because of how important this news is. But I do want to just make reference to one commentator. If you have not watched this is a really great source to check out. It's an interview that Dave Rubin did earlier this week with Christopher Rufo. Christopher Rufo's investigative journalism work is what led, as a cascade effect, to Donald Trump signing this executive order. So it's definitely a great interview to check out. I'm going to leave a link in the description to that interview as well. Side note about liberal victimhood narratives. You know, it really is a cascade effect. It's a way of describing how we get from an ideology to action, right? There's a couple of things that came to mind for me, and this is one of them. You know, when we talk about how liberal victimhood narratives are driven, where does that come from? Why are we all of a sudden seeing so much of that, particularly now in the last year, 2 years? 2010, this is just a thought that came to my mind, and I feel like this kind of succinctly says it. I believe that we will look back at 2020. And 2020 will be remembered as the year that the liberals did all they could to destroy America and then complain about how bad 2020 was. In other words, liberals wreaking as much havoc as they possibly can across all of our major cities in the United States, and then gaslighting the law enforcement and Donald Trump over it. Like, look how bad everything is, but they're the ones causing all of the destruction and ultimately trying to destroy our whole nation. But, you know, I guess we could say, why shouldn't we let the far left do this? Why shouldn't we let the liberals cheer it on? You know? Why shouldn't we let them bully the rest of our country around and then blame others for the bullying tactics they're using? I mean, they are the protected class in our culture right now, right? You might ask, well, wait, what do you mean by that, protected class? How do you make that leap of logic? Well, the logic of the left and why they are the protected class is fueled 100% by critical race theory. In a nutshell, you know, we have to look at critical race theory. What critical race theory is throughout history, they're looking at, well, American history, they're looking at white Americans having intentionally built a racist system that favors themselves and oppresses and disadvantages minority groups, particularly black people. It's based originally on Marxist theory, which if you go back to Marxism, when that was being promulgated and there was books being written and a bunch of experts subscribing to that, it was based primarily on the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, sort of pitting the haves versus the have-nots. But that didn't graft into America seamlessly because we had such a strong middle class. You just had a lot of people that, you know, they were doing far too well to really sell them bourgeoisie versus proletariat. So what they did was they grafted on this kind of racial inequality thing onto Marxism. And that the result is this critical race theory. And basically what it comes down to is a lot of university professors and a lot of authors and book writers, I honestly believe they're looking for a sense of significance in culture. And I think they were just if you're a college professor somewhere, really what you have to look forward to in your life is reading a lot, doing a lot of research, writing, and then having your peers approve or disapprove of the things you publish. And I honestly think we can point to this. It's like if I were to describe a psychology to this. Modern people that are working in universities, I think they were experiencing the frustration that comes along with feeling irrelevant in culture. This whole critical race theory, gives all these people a great sense of relevance. Oh, I can jump on this bandwagon and go all the way down the rabbit hole on this stuff and write lots of books, and it makes a lot of noise in culture, and then maybe I can be the expert that gets interviewed on CNN. It's a little bit of a side note, though. It has been the liberals that have been systematically, if you want to talk about a system, leveraging critical race theory to cast themselves as victims and the big nasty system that they're pointing at, which is run by, white men, as the oppressor. Okay, so you've got the liberals and the people they're fighting for, the downtrodden, the proletariat, and they are leveraging critical race theory to cast themselves as a victim to the big bad amorphous system and how that's oppressing them. In this sort of con job, this master plan for the last 20, 30, 40 years has been basically working pretty well for liberals. They've always had something they could do. Whenever there's been pushback that's come up to it, they've had some sort of defense or some sort of workaround for it until the last 2 weeks. I've heard it said before, if you want to know who in your culture is in power, look at who you are not allowed to be critical of. I'll say that again. If you want to know who in your culture is in power, look at who you are not allowed to be critical of. And they managed to use this critical race theory and political correctness, the liberals did, for many years, to sort of position themselves, to sort of shield themselves or protect themselves from criticism. And anybody that was critical of it, they would just cast that person as, well, you must be the racist thing that we're talking about because you're being critical of our thing, and our thing is morally right. Critical race theory is where it's at. So who are these groups that are being shielded and protected? Well, first of all, we have to say who they're being protected by. Mainstream media, even a lot of alt media now. Entertainment, education institutions, all the way from, kindergarten all the way up. And who are they protecting? They're protecting social justice warriors, women, liberal women anyways, minorities, LGBTQ, and all the other marginalized groups that you can name, you can tack onto that. And it's critical race theory that has been used to describe why these groups needed to be the protected class and why the rest of society needs to bend and change and genuflect to accommodate and give special treatment to these suffering people. And just as it seemed that this critical race theory was catching on, gaining steam in culture, just as it seemed it was really gelling and working for them, as they were making progress, sweeping through all of our institutions, Donald Trump stepped in and threw a big wrench into the works. And that is what we're seeing right now. Donald Trump is currently stopping this toxic philosophy from infesting any more of our institutions in America. And it will de-incentivize our schools from implementing critical race theory going forward. At least that's my projection. My prediction for the next step after this is he's going to he's going to sort of put the spotlight from the critical race theory being pushed through all of our corporations and all of our government institutions. He's going to say, let's look at education next. And all it's really going to take there, I mean, you know, you look at it, well, what are the things that it's tackling? Things like the 1619 Project that was starting to get traction in all of our schools. They were going to start promoting that and teaching it. That may get halted now. Segregated corporate training on racial inequality. We may see an end come to all that, which, you know, would be a great thing for corporations. Elementary K through 12, colleges, indoctrinating and brainwashing all of our kids with this racist Marxist philosophy. I believe that's coming next. These are all examples of what is going to be challenged and stopped with all this. And like I said, this is huge. Everything for modern liberal philosophy hinges on critical race theory, staying protected and pushing its way into our institutions more and more and more. Without critical race theory, the entire liberal philosophy crumbles. There's already been some media pushback on this. All you got to do is do a Google search on it. You'll see a number of articles. I'm going to leave a link to one of these articles in the description here. And I'm just going to read one small excerpt from that article. This is on Vox, you know, our good friends over at Vox. They wrote an article that's titled Critical Race Theory and Trump's War on It Explained. They say in this article, now, with Trump's newly expanded ban on such training sessions, which he has called divisive, un-American propaganda, the administration is signaling that Americans and even those who run the government don't need to understand the country's racist founding, from the genocide of Native Americans to the enslavement of Africans and the role the past plays and how racism persists today. This is all they've got, gaslighting. It's like conservatives, like Donald Trump and conservatives haven't been steeped in all the understanding of all these things their entire life growing up. Yes, we know it's a part of history, duh. We know Native Americans, Africans, we know that there's been problems in the past. There's also been great, wonderful, awesome things that America's created and promulgated throughout the world. I mean, we fought for freedom in other countries when we didn't even have a direct interest in the ending of that. And we've done so many great things as a great nation, the greatest nation in the world. And yet we get this, in this smug, arrogant, probably a millennial or a Z-Gener writing this, the administration is signaling that Americans, and even those who run the government, don't need to understand the country's racist founding. Dumb. But this is all they've got. They literally don't have anything else that they stand for. So, you know, blowing things out of proportion, acting like there's something there when there's nothing there, they've got to do this stuff. And they've got to protect critical race theory. Otherwise, their party is toast. They've got to protect their right to gaslight the president over all this stuff. But it's not working anymore. People in general, the general populace of America isn't buying it anymore. I don't think a lot of liberals are buying this anymore because a lot of them are now getting thrown under the bus as a result of how extreme all this stuff has gone. There's another creator, Michael Knowles. He describes critical race theory as national rot in America. And I just think that's a great way to describe this. So I had to reference him and I had to give him credit for that because I just wanted to use it in my video. To paraphrase, basically, he points out that Trump sees the rot clearly. And that's heavy because I don't think we've had a president that has really seen clearly where the rot is. This executive order is just the first step in dismantling this corrosive ideology. And that's true. You know, it got me thinking about, when I think about things that are corrosive, I'm originally from Michigan, And when you're raised in the Midwest, you have adverse weather. It ages cars faster, so you get your first car when you're like 16 or whatever. You're totally stoked. Even though the thing might be rusting out and it might be falling apart, you're like, I love this car. This is great. I got a car. And I just remember like being back there, and the salt would like destroy the cars really fast. So you'd get like a door panel of a car all rusted out on the bottom, and just looking at it, if I were to give a swift kick to the door of this car, the rust would just fall off. The whole door would fall off the car. It's like the rust, the corrosion is what's holding the car together. And to take it a step further, if you're one of these people, I don't know, if you live in the Midwest, you'll identify with this. Your first car, typically an older car, you'll take it into the mechanic. You'll say, yeah, there's something wrong with the engine. It still runs, but could you find out what's going on and fix the thing? The guy's like, sure, yeah, we'll take a look. He looks around in the engine. He goes, yeah, there's this one thing that we found really bad. We would have to replace that. Okay, well, let's do that. And he goes, but if I replace that piece, it's got corrosion and it's kind of dependent on the engine running is dependent on this thing staying in its corrosive state, because there's 7 other things connected to that are also in a corroded state. So the car will stop running if I fix it. And this really, relating this back to what we're talking about here, which is basically the Democrat Party. Right now, the Democrat Party relies on a system of national rot for their entire platform to continue running. Without their party built on the lies that they've been promulgating, and without their constituency being manipulated by their liberal propaganda lies, their party platform completely falls apart. It will grind to a halt. Fix one thing, you start unraveling the whole deal. So what Trump's actions amount to is this: no more mandatory racial discrimination training in government-funded institutions. And because racial discrimination training, the reason why he's doing that is because racial discrimination training is it's creating the very thing that it's supposed to be eradicating. That's the real irony of the whole deal. Critical race theory, training people in this anti-racism actually creates tension in the workplace. It actually creates more racist tension. It creates more racism where there was none to begin with, or it was not anything to make a big deal about. There was no racism to begin with, and then they bring in the racial training so that it makes people focus on this in an unnatural way, to a point where the result is racism. I honestly think this executive order has far-reaching implications going forward. I think we're going to see some really big things unfold after this is over. Donald Trump wins in November. The cascade effect of this could be a major pushback. This got me thinking about something else I've been seeing in some of the other pundits, some of the other sort of YouTubers out there that are in the conservative space. There's been a movement that's gotten popular in the last couple of years with some of the other conservative creators that I've kept an eye on. And, they're young people. Typically they're younger, but what they're focusing on is they're looking at, like, I guess the way you describe it is like black pilling prospects for our future. So what they're looking at is and it's not to say that it's not founded, okay? So I don't want to take anything away from the argument. There's something valid to be said there, right? They cite things like statistics that are real. They cite mainstream conservative authors. There's one guy that comes to mind, Pat Buchanan. Some of the books that he's written point at some of these indicators for what's coming in the future. But it did kind of create, I see, as a type of black-pilled way of looking at our prospects. A lot of people, they'll like dismiss this group as being like alt-right. I don't like using the term alt-right. I think because to me, it feels dismissive. I would rather just say, look, there's a lot of conservative creators out there. I may be more mainstream in my approach. I don't know. Some people might say I'm extreme. I don't know. But the way I look at it is these young people are looking for ways of putting information together and understand and create predictions or projections for where we're going. I think that's all good, right? But I would like to kind of give an alternative perspective to what they're offering, okay? It's not that they're completely wrong. It's not that they don't have some good points. But I'd like to offer a different perspective. I think if we get too black-pilled going down that rabbit hole, and maybe I'm speaking to the conservative creators out there, these people that are very invested in this idea of like hitting a demographic cliff, and then conservatism is going to end and America is just going to be a wasteland. I think you may not be taking into account that there might be unexpected disruption that might come along at different moments in time that could push back against the projected statistics and some of the blackpilling information that we've been collecting. The question I'd have for you guys is this: what if Donald Trump's actions, along with conservative leaders that truly care about our country over the next 5, 10, 20 years, pushing back against things like critical race theory and the descendants of the cascade effect of critical race theory? What if they can reverse the depressing and bleak statistical analysis, pushing back against what is currently projected as the demographic cliff and the destruction of America as we know it? I just want you to ask yourself that question for right now. But I am going to bring this episode to an end right here. You're going to have to tune in to my next video where I'm going to go a little bit more into first the explanation of where the blackpilling is coming from within our community. I want to maybe cite a couple of examples there. And then I want to talk about building a different kind of evidence. Begin to possibly look at other sources, but also begin to look at indicators that we're seeing right now that may not show up in our statistical analysis that might give us hope for a resurgence of a new conservative age. All right? Hope you enjoyed this show. If you haven't yet, like, comment, subscribe. This has been Greg D. coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. We'll see you back here at Americana X Newswatch again soon.